I'm Michael Bussee. I'm one of the original co-founders of Exodus International. I left the program in 1979 and have since reconciled my spirituality and my sexuality. Now I'm a vocal critic of reparative therapy programs and of Exodus International.
So if I showed up at an Exodus program in the early days, what did the actual program consist of? What did I do that would make me strict?
That would have varied tremendously depending on which Exodus program you went to. When Exodus started in '76, there were just a handful of ministries, one in Northern California, one in San Diego, one in Minneapolis, one in Texas. Just this handful of ministries, and their methods would have varied tremendously. I think ours in Anaheim was probably the most psychologically oriented because I was completing my master's program at the time, and I was every week bringing back therapeutic methods and therapeutic techniques that I had learned in class and trying them out on the people who were coming to the program. So we did things like reflective listening, we did psychodrama where we reenacted painful episodes from our childhood. We employed a variety of methods, a lot of Bible study, a lot of prayer, a lot of group discussion, role-playing situations, how to resist temptation, what to do if you were hit on. So we used psychodrama, we used some Gestalt methods, we used some Rogerian reflective listening, a lot of prayer, a lot of Bible study. But what you would have gotten if you had gone to another program, anybody's guess. You got to keep in mind that these ministries often were no more really than one person with a printed testimony and a post office box. Some of them didn't have a program, they didn't have a group, or they weren't doing therapy, they certainly did. I think at that time I was the one with the most psychological training, and I hadn't even completed a master's program. And I was even discouraged from doing that. I was told by church leaders that psychology was antichrist and that I shouldn't major in psychology. But the things I was learning about confidentiality and about open-ended questions and therapeutic boundaries, all of that was very helpful. So I think we did pretty good therapy. We were pretty good support. We couldn't come up with any methods that actually helped people become straight. We thought God would do that part, that if we provided a sort of safe therapeutic environment, that God would do the changing. We didn't have any specific methods or tricks that we had discovered to help people become heterosexual. The other programs, really though, may have been nothing more than a printed testimony in a post office box. At the time that I met Frank Worthen, at that time he had been doing his Brother Frank ministry for some time, and what he had been doing is just passing out his printed testimony at the gay bars he used to go to. That was his ministry, street preaching. And the Love in Action group began as a small Bible study in the back of a Christian bookstore up in Northern California. Greg Reed had a ministry in Texas called Eagle, which stood for Ex Active Gay Liberated Eternally. Eagle. And he did individual counseling and led some groups. Certainly didn't have any psychological training. After he left Exodus, I understand that he went into a ministry for people who had, or who believed that they had experienced ritual satanic abuse as a child, and that was his new ministry. Outpost was one of the founding ministries in Minneapolis, and they were comprised of a woman, Robbie Kenny, who had been jilted by a gay boyfriend, and a couple of ex-gay guys, and I don't know what they did. I had the feeling from our discussions that a lot of us used similar techniques. Some of the programs are much more oriented towards deliverance and healing of memories. Healing of memories was a big thing then, taking people back through visualization to identify those moments that might have turned them gay, having them relive the pain of it, only this time imagining Jesus in the midst of it. So if they had been victims of childhood sexual abuse, imagining Jesus intervening, picturing themselves as a little child again and imagining Jesus intervening to protect them. If they had been rejected by their parents, imagining Jesus scooping them up in his arms. There were prayers for deliverance. Melodyland was big on deliverance, so there were... I always found it distasteful, but I remember watching exorcisms done by some of the pastors at our church with some of our members. I never really quite believed in that. It seemed very traumatic, and it didn't... I could tell you by the time they got back to the group next Tuesday, they were just as gay as before they had the exorcism. So I never put any faith in that. But you would have experienced a variety of approaches depending on where you went. I think even now there's no consistency. We call ourselves a loose-knit coalition of ministries. There are no real standards for training or for methodology, which is also one of my major criticisms of Exodus to this day.